Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 360. It is Monday, October 27th. I am your host, Paul Rykoff. Welcome to what I'm going to call for now Manosphere Monday. I want to talk military stuff. I want to talk sports. I want to talk culture. It's not limited to men or men's topics, but it's kind of getting put in that bucket by society, and I want to dig into it and pull it apart. In America, the shutdown continues. If you don't work in the federal government, you may not be feeling that. Hurricane Melissa is bearing down on the Caribbean. Folks in Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, the Bahamas are right in the crosshairs. A big week of NFL, ups and downs. The World Series continues. Game 3 tonight. Halloween is only 4 days away, and we may be at war with Venezuela by the weekend. It is a wild time in America, a manic Monday, and now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. And helping us stay vigilant on our inaugural Manosphere Monday, a man I have listened to, watched, rooted for I think about a decade now, maybe more. A guy who's been at the intersection, I think, of military issues, politics, culture, sports, and been a really important voice, especially for the veterans community. He is the former host of the groundbreaking pod on Barstool Zero Block 30 with Kate and Uncle Chaps. If you're outside the military world, you may not know about it, but I want to dig into why you should. A great 8-year run. And now he's the host of a newer podcast called Bold American Pod on Barstool with another veteran and my old friend Ryan Mannion, a dad of 2 and a huge Army football fan. The great and powerful Captain Conor Crehan. I just called you McGregor. Oh, because that's where I put you, man. You're a fighter. But Conor Crehan is here on Independent Americans. Finally, man. Welcome, Captain Con.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for having me. That would be a great guy to be compared to if we just took him in a vacuum of, I would say, his fighting career. And, he's got some other things going on that I don't necessarily want to be lumped into. But, a little Freudian slip there, no big deal. But I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the inaugural Manosphere Monday. You think of me to have on, of all people that you probably know in your world. So I am incredibly honored to be here for this Manosphere Monday. Thank you very much.
You're helping us crack the seal. I appreciate the specificity around Conor McGregor. I think that's right? Like in the ring, yes.
Yeah.
Everything else, I don't know. Maybe the fashion, because
I'm into his fashion too. Yeah, for sure. I think he dresses pretty well. Maybe his suits are maybe a little too tight for my liking, but he's also in much better shape than I am. So I don't know. But overall, it's not the worst comparison, but maybe not the best.
He does whiskey. You guys have been around whiskey.
Yes.
He's a fighter. You're a fighter.
Yes.
But let me start with an important question that I ask everyone to kind of set the ground for what is an interesting day in America. Conor, where are you and how are you, man? Where are you coming from today and how's life, man?
Everything is going great. I am coming to you from my home in New Jersey. I am born and raised in Jersey, and it just kind of worked out that when I left Hoboken after 12 years, after I was in the Army and left active duty, I moved to Hoboken, and I found myself living now 5 minutes from where I grew up. It wasn't the plan, but it's awesome. I love this area of New Jersey where I live. I live in Westfield, New Jersey, if anybody's local and knows the area. And everything is going well. I mentioned to you that I do have those 2 children who are 2 and 2 months old. So needless to say, we are busy currently dealing with that, getting back into the swing of having an infant around, a little baby, because you have your first child and you kind of think you have everything figured out, and then as soon as you think you have everything figured out, it's like, okay, cool, now start over at the starting line again. So I'm doing well, though. I'm very blessed. I have a great wife, great home life here in New Jersey, so I'm doing very well.
Love it. I want to talk more about parenthood on this show. I want to talk more about raising kids, especially in this kind of a chaotic environment. But as a father of 2 myself, I feel like the second one must be kind of like a second deployment, right? I mean,
yeah.
What's harder? Because you're deep in it right now, dude. You're deep in it with the little ones. I say you're kind of deep in it until the littlest one can put on their shoes themselves, right? Then you start to feel like you're getting out of the woods. But I also say it's like dogs, man. Boys especially are like dogs. You got to feed them, you got to love them, and you got to run them. And you got to
Mhm.
do all three a lot more than you think. But what's harder, man? Combat deployments and coming out of West Point, or raising two little kids?
Wow. Talk about a difficult question. I think they're similar in that I remember before I deployed to Iraq, you talk to a lot of people. You talk to your buddies who have deployed before, and you ask them all sorts of questions and everything you can possibly think of, down to what's the food like? What's the gym situation? And all the little nooks and crannies that come with being on a deployment. And then you get on your own deployment. And I don't know if this was your experience, but I think like everybody's deployment is a little bit differently, right? And you can ask all the questions, but until you actually get into it and figure it out for yourself, you're not actually going to know. And I think in that regard, parenting is the same thing. You can ask questions and talk to your friends, but then when you're actually in it and you experience it and you understand all those jokes that your friends were making for so long and all the memes that are out there, and you can really fully appreciate it. But I would say if I had to pick one versus the other, I think parenting, because listen, you have to actually do these things for your children. At least with the deployment, when I was a platoon leader, I didn't have to put on guys' boots for them. I didn't have to put them in the shower or in the bath and bathe them. I didn't have to feed them. They were all very self-sufficient. So while the stakes were maybe a little bit different and it was a little bit more dangerous relatively, I would absolutely say that parenting is a little bit more challenging. And, you know, it goes to what I like to say all the time when people say, hey, what's your best piece of advice for a new parent? I always say, don't listen to anybody, because every kid is different. And my wife and I really agree with that. You can ask a few things here and there, I think, but largely you're going to know your kid by hour one. You're going to know your kid better than anybody else in the world. So don't bog yourself down with all these other influencers or books or trying to talk to ChatGPT. Certainly listen to your pediatrician, but overall, you're going to figure it out on your own. So that was a long way of saying I think parenting is actually harder than going on a deployment.
I think it's true. And I think you get less sleep,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Right.
And you know,
right.
I talk to new parents, and some folks I say, look, like when I talk to somebody who hasn't had kids yet, I'm like, you just don't know. I can't
Yeah.
explain it to you. I think there's only a couple things in life you can only understand if you experience them. I think combat's one of them. I would
Mhm.
now say probably a pandemic, just like the magnitude and the interesting and weirdness of it all, right?
Yeah.
Probably dying, right? I would assume. Sebastian Younger's been on my show. I think he would probably say the same is true. And then parenthood. Like I can't tell you what it's going to be like. You just got to experience it. Once you do, you kind of come through the looking glass and you're on the other side, right?
And I mean, like when people come to you and say, if I had come to you before my son was born and said, hey, Paul, what's it like to have two kids? What would you have even said to me?
That's what I would say.
Exactly. Exactly.
I would say the greatest joy of my life and the single hardest mission I've ever taken. Right? Like that's
Right.
probably the way I'd say it. But I think somebody else gave me some advice that I might flip back on you. When my wife
Mhm.
was pregnant, someone said to me, ask everyone you meet who's a parent for advice. And that was like, I started doing that when I was traveling, especially like cab drivers, waiters, guys I was sitting next to on a flight or whatever. And it was interesting, especially older parents and grandparents had this kind of like salient focus where they would give me one thing, you know, that was really, really, but the overwhelming thing was like, love them and enjoy them, right? Because I think
Right.
all the stuff about it going fast is true, right? And those of us,
Right.
especially who've been in harm's way, know to appreciate it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think by and large, if you love them, you're going to do right by them, right? If you love and care for them, all the other stuff, and I'm oversimplifying it, but I think everything else will fall into place and you'll make the right decisions. Now, I think as parents, everybody's going to make mistakes. There are no perfect parents in this world. And that's the other thing where I go back to now, where there's such an availability of information and you can consume so much: books, influencers, podcasts. It's almost as if you read too much and you try to do too many different things, you're going to make yourself nuts that you're not doing a good job. Or two, you're just going to confuse everything. Tie it back to the military. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Love them and care for them, and you'll do right by them.
I like it. I like it. All right. With that intro and kickoff underway, you ready to get through some of the issues that are happening in America, impacting your kids, my kids, and kids around the world? I call them the
Let's
top
do it.
topics. I said, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. we're going to kick it off with today's top topic. All right, man, you have been a real voice for the veterans community on mental health, on national security, and so many other issues. And I feel like in many ways, all the shit we've done, especially in the advocacy space, in the organizing space, has kind of prepared us for this moment where it's all happening kind of at the same time, right? And maybe what I think is the most important issue that's not getting enough attention is what is potentially war everywhere. Right? I mean, we've got Iran, we've got Yemen, we've now got the Caribbean, we've got the National Guard and the troops. I have said that I think the most important story in America and now in the world is that Donald Trump can do anything he wants with the most powerful military in the world, which now extends to the coast of Venezuela. By the time we drop this afternoon, I wouldn't be surprised if there were strikes in Venezuela. But there's no congressional oversight. We don't have a draft. You know, guys like you and I did multiple tours where most of America lived life uninterrupted. And I feel like we're almost headed into global war on terror 2.0, where a small group of people continue to sacrifice and everybody else is watching the NFL. But with that set up, man, what's your take, man, on the overall landscape and this phase we're entering into where Trump says he doesn't want to get into any new wars, but it sure feels like we're doing a lot more war.
Yeah, it's almost like says one thing but means another thing. And I mean, if you really get into it with Venezuela, you could uncover that there are a multitude of different reasons why we might be over there. You know, people might say it's the drugs, people might say it's the oil, but at the core of all of that, you have an unstable leader there in Venezuela. And I think what we've learned and what we should have learned is that when you're dealing with that instability of someone in another country, it doesn't typically end well for us. So you can try to be diplomatic all you want, but if you keep poking the bear, eventually something might happen to where you need to call on our military to get more involved. Now, what I will say is that it seems to me right now that what's going on in Venezuela doesn't necessitate putting troops on the ground in Venezuela. It seems to me like we're doing a lot of actions, obviously from the sky with our drone capabilities. We are positioning our naval vessels in the region. And that in and of itself is crazy when you think about it, because that's another thing I think about. When we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, everything was right there on the ground. We could see it. And we saw, okay, we're in these countries. We're the Marines, the Army, and all the other supporting branches, the Air Force, the Navy. We could see who's there. What's scary to me, I think, when you have our Navy just kind of surrounding these countries, when you think about the capability of our naval vessels and how far away we can reach out and touch people. And quite honestly, like, you know, you could start a nuclear war. You could just level an entire country. That to me is a scary proposition. So I think right now we need to get a handle on what are we actually doing there. If it is in fact just at the surface level, we're trying to interdict these drug vessels that are bringing drugs, whether it's to this country or to other countries. Okay, I understand that. But what I've learned in following the military and politics as closely as I have for the last decade, especially, is that things are never always what they seem, right? And I hate to say that I just question things almost immediately. And I always think that maybe there's some sort of underhanded, I don't want to say nefarious, but there's always something else going on there. So the idea that, oh, Venezuela has a whole bunch of oil that we could leverage for our country. And maybe we're going there under the guise of, well, we have to get rid of this dictator and we have to get rid of the drugs, which, again, stopping drugs from coming into this country, that's a good thing. Making sure that an evil person doesn't run amok, whether it's in his own country or other countries, and cause problems. These are things that we need to interdict. But overall, I'm just a little uneasy about what potentially could pop off there. And as you said, this afternoon, I mean, it just seems very unstable at this point, and the instability makes me nervous.
I think, you know, I feel like that's some good West Point training that has helped you be a skeptic, right? And to ask hard questions. And it doesn't feel like enough hard questions are being asked. But you've been, I think the first time I met you in person might have been at the Headstrong event years ago, right? And you've been at this intersection of what we talk about a lot, the civil military divide. I want to ask you, Connor, about something specific. I feel like we're entering an age of Chicken Hawks 2.0. A lot of folks who are like, you know what, go bomb that city, go drop those troops in there. But I don't see, I'll use Scott Jennings as an example from CNN. He's not going. He's not
No.
sending his kids. And, there was a time when you were a West Point cadet and then you were a platoon leader and your butt was in harm's way. I feel like we've gotten further and further away from the country being connected to the issues. And that's why I think it's a really important point for our generation of veterans to speak up and ask hard questions. But what do you think about that? This civil military divide, where I think we've also got the rise of kind of the greatest moment for cosplay dudes ever created, where they can join ICE and get a $50,000 signing bonus if they couldn't get in the Marine Corps. And they can, instead of kicking indoors overseas, they can beat up some migrants. And it feels like a lowering of the standard in a way that I think most veterans are actually pretty uncomfortable with, because we didn't have a lot of the authority that ICE agents had when we were overseas. And now it seems like they're kind of shooting from the hips. That's a lot to throw at you, but it's in your wheelhouse. What do you think?
So I think people largely forget the finality of war, right? And you and I both know, all of our friends know, like we know people who have paid that ultimate sacrifice. And that is easy to grasp when you've experienced it and you've seen it up close. When you're a civilian that is incredibly removed, it's very easy to just say, well, wow, we'll just throw our military at it. Now, on the one hand, yes, our military exists for a reason. It exists to protect our country, to ensure the safety of our civilians. And when there is a necessity to go and retaliate, I would like to think that we're not actually running around the world looking for wars to start. So I would think it would be largely retaliation at this point, that we're ready to do that, right? And I think coming out of 9/11, it was simple. It was, okay, we were attacked and now we're going to go respond. And then the longer that we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, it became more murky. Like, wait a second, what are we still doing here? And that's a whole other discussion for another day in terms of those two conflicts. But again, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how we are not seeing on the news or on social media our own troops. We're just seeing videos of basically video game, right? We're seeing boats that are being blown up out of nowhere. It's like you just see the video, you see the boat going along, and all of a sudden that boat's not there anymore. That's not real, in the sense that you can't, especially if you've never been in the military, you can't look at that and think like, oh, well, that's going to affect me. So I think it is incumbent upon these people who are making these decisions of whether or not we're going to leverage our military to be mindful of that there is a real cost to this. And, relative to going back to Iraq and Afghanistan, relative to the amount of people that lost their lives on the opposition side, we'll call it, versus, our soldiers and our sailors and Marines, it's a smaller number, but still, we don't want to lose our service members. That is part of the job. But I don't love when people who have never served are very quick to just throw our military around as, forgive the pun, a trump card. Like, oh, we'll just throw our military in there. It's like, well, no, because guess what? There's a lot that comes with that. There's a lot of hardship that comes with those deployment schedules. There's a lot of families that are impacted. I'm very lucky. I was a single guy when I was in the military, and that made it so much easier, because I cannot imagine if I had a wife, and especially if I had children at home, and trying to explain to them, like, daddy's got to go to work, but what is work? Oh, well, that's daddy going somewhere in another part of the world and I might not come home. So I don't love when people want to just, as I said, just throw our military at every problem. And I think it requires a lot more discussion. What do you think?
I think that's an important point. I mean, everybody's talking about should we or shouldn't we kill bad guys, right? And I don't think there's enough discussion about should we or should we not put American men and women in harm's way.
Yes.
But more importantly, every time you make a decision to go, the president is saying, I am willing to have Americans die for this thing. And I think that's where he's failed to make a case to the American people. Why are they going? Why might we get America? Yeah, sure, you could say, oh, they're just narco-terrorists, or they're just pirates, or just whatever. But, anything can happen, right? Ships still fall in the sea. Planes fall from the sky. And caskets can come home. And you've got to give that mother a reason why her son or daughter died. And I think anytime you disconnect that and you make it a video game, it becomes dangerous, especially when it's other people's kids. Let me ask you to go into a related subject. This is exactly what I want to do with kind of Manosphere Monday, right? We're going to bridge from military into media, but related. There's this thing happening called the Pete Hegseth Show, right? That we are all very close to. I don't know if he was ever on your podcast back in the day.
No, he hasn't.
Maybe you met him or not, but
I
know
actually haven't. I mean, it's like I have some very close friends who are friends with him or run in his circle or have run in his circle. You know, I know some folks at Princeton who are friends with him. So, you know, kind of peripheral circles, but I've never actually met the man, no.
And I know you've got Ryan Mannion, who I have tremendous respect for, who, if folks don't know, leads the Travis Mannion Foundation. You should check her out. Check out Connor's podcast. I know I saw she was recently with Hegseth. A lot of us in the veterans community know Hegseth, have met Hegseth. But right now, especially now, I think after this spectacle of him flying around in a jet and doing the push, it's become the Pete Hegseth Show. But I also know you cover these issues on your show. And I want you to comment on how you feel about, as a member of the media, and I want to get into Barstool and what that world is like in a minute, but as a member of the media yourself, you and I were uniquely qualified to be members of the new Pentagon Press Corps. I mean, they got rid of the AP, they got rid of Fox and Newsmax and CNN, and they replaced it with InfoWars and the My Pillow Guys TV network, right? What are your thoughts on that, man? How do you feel about that?
Pete is just one example, Secretary Hegseth, excuse me, is just one example of, it's a microcosm of where we're at in this country, I think, in terms of how much is dictated by social media. You know, 20 years ago, freaking give me a Secretary of Defense, Gates, like he probably never felt the need to fly off the back of a Chinook and say, hey, make sure somebody's getting this on tape. I think it's a byproduct of the, you know, feeling like you have to perform at all times because there has to be something that you have to then put up on social media to show that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing my job. You know, he posted all those videos of all the workouts when he first came on board with the different units. Now, I think that's a great morale booster. You show up for PT in the morning, the Secretary of Defense is there to PT with you. That's pretty cool. But you wish, and it's not possible anymore, but you wish he could do all these things and not then have to post them on social media and ultimately end up on the news as topics of discussion. So I think this is less about him, and you see it from even today. Like the White House tweeted that picture of President Trump in some sort of video game. I don't play video games.
I want to talk about that. Actually, I want to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, but that's another example. Let's come back to that. That's another example. It's like, wait, what are we doing? Why are we even doing this? So I just think it's been born out of necessity. So I don't know that I necessarily put the blame on any one person. It's almost just the call from society to want to have this voyeuristic glance into the lives of these people. And in order to maintain your support from your particular base, you have to do these things. I just wish that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to mention that, and this is going to be a test of our new system. We're daily now, folks. If you haven't heard, tune in every day. We'll post new episodes on YouTube, on Spotify, everywhere. It's always free. But this morning, Monday morning, Trump posted a picture of himself dressed like Master Chief from Halo, which is actually a Halloween costume I have and I have used. Okay, Chris, I hope can pop up the image here. But it's Trump in a basically Space Marine uniform saluting the flag. And what was interesting is they also retweeted a statement from GameStop, the video game company, saying the video game wars are over. Halo will now be on PlayStation. It's basically like saying, hey, you know, Netflix and YouTube have combined. You can get everything in one place. You don't have to pay for two things. And I think it's actually a strategy, Connor. Like, this is a focus on the Manosphere. This is perfect for Manosphere Monday, right? They're talking about UFC fans. They're talking about TikTok users. They're focused on podcast bros, right? Like Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan. And they're doing stuff that I think is especially focused, which is like sexing up Kristi Noem and advertising ICE, right? So you take someone like Kristi Noem, you put her in a flak jacket, and you're appealing to a very specific demographic, which is both the guys we serve with and gals that we serve with, and maybe more importantly, the ones who didn't and wanted to. It's kind of aspirational, right? It's the ultimate aspiration for fake badasses, right?
Yeah.
Guys who didn't join the military but love UFC. This is like a shining moment for them. And he's saying, I see you and I validate you and I'm your champion. So I wonder if I wanted to get into this with you
Yeah.
because you guys are at Barstool, right? Like he
Yeah.
wants Dave Portnoy. He wants the Barstool audience. And this is how he gets it.
It's just kind of funny you use that example of the aspirational, and that's a really polite way of putting it. But how many times have you been around somebody and you're talking about your service and they say to you, well, I was going to join. Yeah. And then, I got a job, so I didn't. And it's like, I totally would have went. I totally could have done it. It's like, well, okay, but you didn't, but I don't know why you felt the need to say that. So that always kind of makes me
It's
laugh.
the insecurity, man. That's it. That's the nugget.
Yeah.
It's the insecurity. And that's
Yeah.
what they're latching into.
Yeah, right. But I think in today's day and age, you almost have to try to appeal to that lowest common denominator, right? So who is going to find it cool if Secretary Noem is walking around and she looks a certain way? How's it going to look if the president is posting from the official White House account that he's cool with video games? So it bothers me in the sense that, growing up, I had this idealistic view, and this is me being a kid. You think that everybody who works in Washington, our congressmen, our senators, are the best and the brightest that we possibly have as this country. And you have to be so smart to get elected to public office at that level. And then you get a little older and you start to see, and then in the last 10 years, when I've had the opportunity to kind of sit down with these people and talk to them off camera and really kind of understanding, talk to staffers and you understand how things happen, you're like, oh my God, some of these people are brain dead. They're not smart at all. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to get elected to Congress. You just have to say the right things, have enough money, and if your district goes a certain way, you can get yourself elected. So I think everybody's just kind of leaning into that now. It's like, well, we just have to get everybody to think we're the coolest. And I hate that it's become this sort of popularity contest, but that's the reality of the country. And I would love to get to a place, and I won't say get back to a place, because as I said, I don't think it's there now. I would like to see us get to a place where our elected officials are the best and the brightest. They are the smartest individuals. And unfortunately, because you see the games now that you have to play, if you want to go become an elected official, and it's so cringy when you see them try to do like TikTok videos. It's like you're 50 years old, like you have no idea what TikTok is. Some staffer told you need to do this, and it's so unbelievably transparent. Just stop. I would appreciate if you just said, I don't know what TikTok is. I would appreciate that more than you trying to do a weird video that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I wish it was to a place where our best and brightest would actually want to go serve. But I think so many people aren't into playing those games and feel like they can do better outside the system, whether that's in philanthropy, whether that's being, a volunteer coach in their community, whether that's working at their local church, whatever the case may be. And we're just not getting the best that we have to offer. And we're perpetuating that by playing all these silly games that you see right now.
Yep. I think that's a bullseye, man. I wanted to mention that you guys had a lot of interesting podcasts over the years, but you also had members of Congress on. Duncan Hunter was on your podcast and basically admitted to war crimes, didn't he?
Yes. I wasn't a part of that interview. My colleagues at the time, Kate and Chaps, were doing that interview. And I remember them texting me after. And it was funny because Kate, in so many words, said, Chaps, did he just admit to a bunch of stuff that he shouldn't have admitted to? And Chaps said, oh, yeah, no, that wasn't good. I couldn't believe some of the things that he said on our show, and that nobody on his staff came to us afterwards and said, like, hey, that wasn't the best. Could we maybe not run that? Now, we probably still would have ran it anyway, but it's crazy to think that.
And there was speculation about that issue in specific, and maybe he felt comfortable with you guys. Maybe he had a couple drinks. I don't know what, but that was, that's an example of how this kind of a format can reveal people, or they let their guard down. Let's stay on a similar topic that I want to talk to you about. In the news almost hourly now is the Graham Platner saga. Okay, like a different kind of show. We had the Pete Hegseth show over here. A guy with controversial tattoos, right? Now we've got this new saga in Maine with a Democratic candidate, Graham Platner. He's a Marine. He also served in the Army, multiple combat tours, a populist guy, wears a T-shirt. He's an oyster farmer. And he was kind of this great hope for the Democrats to be someone real, right? A guy with a beard who could talk tough. Now it's revealed misogynistic, racist commentary. And maybe most importantly, this is what I want to talk to you about, a Nazi tattoo, right? The skull and crossbones affiliated with the Nazis. Like anybody who knows anything would see that tattoo and say, what's that all about, right? And everybody can relate to being drunk with your buddies in a foreign country. Go get a stupid tattoo, right? I know lots of folks who got stuff in Chinese. They don't know what it means, right? But this guy is running for Senate, and it's become a big deal. And what I really want to talk about is how many Democrats, especially Bernie Sanders, I saw Chris Murphy, are kind of apologizing for it by saying, well, he has some really tough combat tours, and he went through a lot. And I don't know about you, Connor, but I don't know anybody. I had a lot of friends who went through tough transition. My transition was not easy. I didn't run down and get a fucking Nazi tattoo. And if I did, I didn't keep it there, even after people told me. And if I ran for Senate, I didn't keep it there. And I didn't ask for politicians to make excuses for me. But I think it's a really clarifying moment that reveals kind of the identity crisis happening in the Democratic Party. But it also reveals a civil-military divide. I don't think because you had a combat tour, you should be excused from crime. I don't think because you did combat tours, you can be excused from beating up your kids. And I don't think because you did combat tours, you should be excused from wearing Nazi tattoos. What do you think, man?
Really revolutionary stuff there, Paul, to think those things. Thank God. Let me start by saying, when I was a young kid, my father always said to me, you get a tattoo, I'm going to rub it off with sandpaper. Don't ever get a tattoo. And so to this day, I don't have tattoos. That's not an indictment on tattoos.
I have no tattoos. I have no tattoos.
Wasn't for me. And that's good to hear. Not for me.
More because I was more non-committal. I was like, fuck, if I get this thing, I don't like it later, then I'm going to have to get it removed. I probably overthought it, but that was a good thing, right?
Yeah, right. What I think, and this goes back to, the crisis we have right now with our politicians is, if you look at this objectively, right, it's these same politicians were saying that Hegseth tattoos mean this, that, and the other thing, and had such a problem with his tattoos. But now they're making excuses and trying to explain away this guy's tattoos. Now, I don't, without getting into Hegseth's tattoos, because I don't know, maybe there's some gray area. I don't really know what his tattoos mean or don't mean. But we got a real problem here with this other gentleman's tattoos, because either you are not intelligent enough to know that you branded your body with a Nazi symbol, or you did and you found out that you did and you didn't care, or you knew all along and you wanted that on your body. None of those is a good option here. So the fact that people want to explain like, he had a real tough go of it when he was deployed, so he then became a Nazi, or he thought it was okay to put it out there that he supports that, it's very, very problematic to me. And I think it's just more indicative of the current landscape of our politicians, that they talk out of both sides of their mouth. And that's not overly new to politics. But even now, you have this microscope that is social media, where everything is recorded and everybody can really keep track of what you say, especially publicly. So just shoot me down the middle. Just be like, yeah, that's not good. Just tell me what it is.
Make another kind of public plea. Less vets with their shirts off.
Yeah.
There's plenty of guys out there, like I think of my friend Rudy Reyes, right?
Rudy's a good guy.
Rudy should have his shirt off 24 hours a day, right? If I look like
100%.
Rudy Reyes, you guys
I would
know
never
Rudy
wear
Reyes
shirts.
Generation Kill, and from basically every special ops television show. I love Rudy, one of the kindest people. Rudy, take your shirt off all the time. But like RFK Jr. and Hegseth and Graham Platner, you know what? Keep your fucking shirt on. I think, especially if you want to be in public office, how about you keep your shirt on, right? Unless you go to the beach or something else.
I think you should look a certain way in terms of how you dress when you're running for these offices. And I understand you want to relate to people. So given the certain settings, you can dress that down and be a little bit more casual. But not to get too far off topic, but like Senator Fetterman, when he's walking around in a hoodie and shorts, that bothers me.
It bothers me too. I have a problem with it.
Should that bother me? I don't know, but I guess I'm old school, and, you want to look the part and carry yourself with a certain sense of professionalism. And, part of being a professional and part of being a public figure is not having Nazi tattoos and paraphernalia on your body.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm old school too. Like, I wouldn't wear shorts at church. Okay, I wouldn't
Right.
wear a
Right.
cutoff, right? In any house of worship, I'm going to ask you this because you always got a hat on. Like, I had this discussion with my kids. They're allowed to wear hats in school. When I was a kid, they weren't, right? And the question is, like, I take my hat off at the dinner table, even if I'm wearing a
Same.
baseball cap. That's how I was raised. That's how I was trained. What do you take the hat off at the dinner table?
1,000%. When I walk inside, I take my hat off. I won't wear it in a restaurant. Now, if I'm at a bar
Except
hanging out
when you're
with
doing a
buddies,
podcast.
yeah,
When you're
except when
doing
I'm
a
doing
podcast.
podcasts. When I'm doing podcasts, that's a little different. But no, I'm with you. When I see people post pictures, especially in nice restaurants, and you have a hat on, I just think that it's a. I don't want to sound mean here. We'll just say that's not the right thing to do. So I'm not a fan of hats on inside restaurants, and certainly not in professional settings.
I will say I'll make exceptions for people who need to be in disguise. Okay, if you're Tom Hanks and you're out to dinner and you want to go out to dinner, you want everybody to see you, put your hat on. I will tell you, like, if I don't want to be as noticeable, I will put a hat on because I'm a big bald white guy, and I
Yeah.
find that if I wear black clothes, everybody asks me where the bathroom is. Right? Everybody, you probably have this too. Everybody, hey
Yes.
man, where's the bathroom? I'm like, I'm not fucking working here. I'm having a meal or I'm having a drink. I'm not on staff right now, so I'm conscious of wearing black and being a bald guy in any bar or restaurant. All right, with that,
Yes.
thank you for taking us through this. We're going to continue Manosphere Mondays with maybe my favorite part. We're going to talk some sports.
Let's do it.
You come from Barstool. Your story is fantastic. You basically camped out at Barstool until they gave you a show, right? You're legendary.
More or less. More or less, yeah.
Right? And so this is your wheelhouse, man. Huge sports weekend, NFL, college football, NBA, F. I want to talk about all of it, but I got to give a shout out. I am coaching football and soccer. I'm doing something totally crazy. I'm coaching 5 teams, okay? Right?
Jeez.
Yeah, yeah. So my 8U Commanders team lost, and this is why I mentioned it. They lost a tight one. You know what the score was, Connor?
What's that?
6-7. I'm not shitting you. It was 6-7. We lost. We went into double overtime. They went for 2, didn't get it. We went for 2, didn't get it. We went for 2, didn't get it. They went for 1 and got it. We lost 6-7. Then we lost 6-8. We had a doubleheader. My Seahawks 10U won big. Bengals won big. My soccer teams both played hard and lost. But maybe the biggest loss that I got to talk about, a guy that I'm sure you root for if you're from Jersey, Skattebo. I got the jersey behind me. Cam Skattebo, who I think has brought energy that I haven't seen in New York since Linsanity, right? This kid has been like a thunderbolt on a program and a city and a team that was looking for it, but he blew his ankle out. He's probably out the whole season, maybe longer. Thoughts on that and the state of the NFL right now?
Yeah, so that was really tough to see because really since Eli Manning left the Giants have been looking for their identity, right? And it's a really storied franchise. There's a lot of tradition there, and they've been kind of wandering. And maybe, Daniel Jones showed flashes, and now it's unbelievable how well he's doing there in Indianapolis. But then you have I wouldn't say a controversy, but I think when they drafted Dart, what we've seen so often is rookies come in, play too quickly, and flame out, and then it's a wasted pick, and they're just nothing. So, I understand why they went with Russell Wilson to start the season. He starts playing bad. They bring in Dart, and then you got Skattebo. And what I love about Skattebo is he harkens back to football days of old when it's, I'm going to buckle my chin strap, and I'm not running around you. I'm running through you, and do your best to stop me. And it really is just a joy to watch somebody who has that energy, who clearly has that love for the game. So when you put him and Jackson Dart together, they just seemed like they had this great chemistry. And you talked about it, you said the word energy. And I think that's so necessary in the game because you could see when he went down in the game yesterday, the Giants were deflated. I forget what the score was at the time, but it was close. And then the game got out of hand in favor of the Eagles, and they just had the upper hand, especially playing in Philadelphia. So, unfortunately, I don't know how the rest of the season is going to go for the Giants. I don't envision it going well, but I do think it's super encouraging to see when you get Neighbors back and Dart, who carries himself like a professional, and more importantly, I think it takes a certain type of individual to play quarterback in New York. He seems like he has that right now. He is saying all the right things in the press conferences after the game. He's taking ownership of the play on the field. He is a clear leader, which is obviously imperative for the position of quarterback, but I think even more so playing in New York. And you could see when Skattebo went down, the pain, anguish, anger that Dart was feeling in his reaction. And I think that just goes to show like how beloved this guy is already as a rookie in Skattebo. So, I hope when they all come back healthy next year, I think the Giants are trending in the right direction. As far as the rest of the NFL goes, I live with a diehard Eagles fan who, is very animated. And maybe that's part of the reason I love her, is because she is a very, very animated sports fan, especially when it comes to the Eagles and Penn State football. So it's enjoyable for her in the house on Sundays most of the day. But, overall, in terms of the state of the league, I don't know. I heard somebody was talking about how right now it's a little more exciting to watch college football. Now, I'm biased. I prefer college football to the NFL just because of the parity, and certainly at the NFL level, the level of play is at the highest it could possibly be. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I think we're starting to see some teams take shape and see who's going to emerge this year in the NFL. But overall, I think the NFL's in a good place, and it's hard to think otherwise.
I'm with you on that. I think an NFL season is kind of like, I'm gonna keep using this because it's military, Manosphere Monday here. It's kind of like a deployment. Like you start out with a full team, right? And then you're like, okay, you lost this guy to dental. This guy's got mental health issues. This guy got blown up, and you still got to keep moving forward, right? I feel like the NFL, especially, the injury rate is so high that it's really like a leadership management challenge, especially for the coaches, to figure out how to navigate that adversity and play the cards you've got. And it's great to see somebody like Daniel Jones, but there's also a common theme that I think made Skattebo especially tough. I don't know if you know his backstory. His dad was an exterminator. I mean, there's all these legendary stories of him as a child climbing walls, and it sounds like he almost like had rabies when he was a kid. I can't imagine, right?
Yeah.
But there's also, his dad is enjoying this moment. And the thing I watch about Jackson Dart is his parents are around, right? And you can see how they've supported this kid and gotten him ready for the moment. And I want to just take that over to baseball for a second, where I want your pick on the World Series. I'm going to come back and ask you to make a Monday night pick. But we've got this clash, which is shaping up to be a great one, between the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. I love the Vladdy story, but I just can't root for the Blue Jays after you keep doing the Yankees lose shit, and they played New York in the clubhouse. And most importantly, because I love Shohei Ohtani. I love what he stands for. I love the example he sets, with him and Yamamoto last night cleaning the dugout after the game the other night, right? Like, they're just role models that tip their hat, that pay respect, that are team players. And I love that for our country at a time when I feel like my little boys need role models, and Shohei's the right kind. But what's your take on the World Series so far, and who are you picking to win this as we're tied 1-1 going into Game 3 tonight?
Hey, it's hard to really go against the Dodgers, right? And you talk about Shohei. I think because football in this country has ascended to the level that it has, baseball has kind of taken a backseat. I can remember, growing up, I was, definitely in the 90s, going into those Yankee runs that they had in the mid to late 90s. I can remember getting excited to watch the World Series, and I think that's gone away a little bit in this country. And what has transpired now as a result of that is we have a once-in-a-generation type player in Shohei Ohtani, okay? The fact that he is playing two positions, hitting the ball as well as he does, and pitching as well as he does, that just doesn't get talked about enough, right? Unless you're like a diehard baseball fan, I feel like it's like the third story, fourth story. The World Series is happening right now, and the lead story on every show is football. That's crazy. So that's just unfortunate. But I got to go for the Dodgers for the same reason. You talk about. I don't like the Blue Jays. The Vlad story obviously is nice, but being a Yankees guy, you can't root for the team coming out of their division there. So I'm gonna go with the Dodgers.
I feel you on that one. I'm still picking the Dodgers. Let me ask you then, Army football. I can't have you on and not have you talk about Army football. You played at Army. Army is probably the number one team in my family's household because we live in New York City. We root for Rutgers. My kid loves Oregon. The other one loves Ohio State. We love Amherst, where I played. But Army, I think, should be New York City's football team. but
Yes.
it's kind of America's team, right? And I would say no better place to watch a game. My kids went there for baseball camp this summer. There was no football camp because they're redoing the stadium. But it's a really special thing. And they had an incredible year last year, bumpy this year, but they're going into Air Force. Let me ask you this. As somebody who lives it, who roots for every day, for the average sports fan, the average American, why do you think Army football is important?
It's important because of how we play the game, and especially now more than ever. As we look at the college football landscape and NIL and kids transferring, playing at 2, 3, 4 schools sometimes and running to where they can get the most money. And listen, I'm not opposed to NIL. Don't misunderstand me. But what you lose when you have these kids just chasing a paycheck and chasing personal glory is you lose that culture and you lose that team aspect of the game of football that makes it so special. And what's so great about Army is, again, maybe this is old man yelling at the cloud here, but they play the game the right way for lack of a better explanation. You know, Coach Monken says all the time, we're never going to be the most talented team on the field, but we're able to win because we play the game together. We play and we've cultivated, and Coach Monken at the top has cultivated a culture of toughness. And when you think about not just football, but then, all right, what are these guys going to go do after they graduate and be leaders in our military? Well, geez, I want the leaders of our military to be the toughest SOBs we have in this country. So why wouldn't you want to root? There's just all these great storylines, but what it comes down to is you have good kids who are playing football because they love their brother next to them. They love wearing, Arm and West Point across their chest, and they're playing for themselves. They're playing for their brothers. They're playing for the school. They're playing for the Army at large, and ultimately for the country. So, I mean, I don't know how you can't be romantic about that if you like sports.
I'm with you. Every time somebody says the Cowboys are America's team, I remind them that they forgot about Army. And there's something else special. This summer, my boys and I did a lot of sports, a lot of camps. We went to watch Army practice. And then a couple weeks later, we went to watch the Jets practice, right? And you've probably seen Army practice under Monken. I mean, that is like clockwork. And I told my boys, my wife, we were there, and I was like, watch them move sections, watch how they manage time, watch how disciplined they are. You have never seen precision like an Army football practice with a bunch of guys who are locked in. I don't care what any NFL team does. There's nobody dragging ass. There's nobody dropping their helmet. They are locked in and they are really efficient. And then we went to watch the Jets, and I texted my buddy Barry, shout out to Barry Herman, right? I said, dude, I think they're going to be really bad. That was an energyless practice. There was no leadership. After, it was a hot day. It was like 95 degrees. And at the end of the training camp, like, I think Garrett Wilson and maybe 2 other guys stayed around to sign autographs. The rest of them ran in. And you could tell something about a team when these kids are standing out there in the heat and they won't come out and sign autographs. And I could feel the lack of cohesion and the lack of culture. And I think that's an important examination in how 2 different programs are being run. Army is facing Goliath, pretty often. The Jets should be able to lock in, but I think a lot of it has to do with coaching, and Monken deserves a lot of credit, man.
No, he's fantastic, and he really has set a great example, and that's not surprising to hear that you saw that when you went to practice, because I think his predecessor would always say in press conferences, like, well, my job is to prepare these guys to be second lieutenants. Well, no, coach, your job is to coach football. Okay. Like, they have a lot of other people and activities going on at West Point that are going to prepare them to be lieutenants. But what Coach Monken does, and I've seen this now because I've talked to guys who have now played for Coach Monken and gone out in the Army, and what people have said about guys that have come from Monken's programs, why they're so prepared for the Army is because of that discipline aspect. It's because of that toughness aspect. So he's teaching them to play football a certain way, and then those skills are and lessons are transferable to the Army. So in a roundabout way, or actually a more direct way, he is making them great Army officers, but he understands, like, my job here is to win football games. So it's kind of like a win-win and great scenario that He is running the program in such a way that these guys are then going to be amazing Army officers. They're going to be amazing leaders. And then if and when they leave the Army, they'll be go be good citizens and good pillars of their community. I mean, we just saw the story earlier this year of Larry. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. And I
the
feel really,
the kid who pulled the guy out of the burning car.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
For
that
folks who
doesn't
didn't see
happen.
this, there was an accident in Highland Falls outside of West Point. I think the kid was driving by with his father, right? And they jumped out of the car and ran into the burning car.
Come on, get him out!
Heart-pounding drama as a 20-year-old West Point cadet and his father drag an injured motorist from his wrecked car. You can see a downed power line beneath the vehicle. It could ignite at any moment. They carry the injured driver across the road to safety just in time. Behind them, the car is engulfed in flames.
You're a hero, sir.
Sorry, Larry Pickett Jr. and his father, Larry Pickett Sr.
Yeah, and they ran in and pulled the guy out of a burning car, literally.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And I know exactly where that road is. You probably do too, right? You went to West Point. And I think that's a great example, Connor, of what maybe is most important in all this. There's the old, at Notre Dame, they have play like a champion on the wall, right? And what do they have at Mikey Stadium? It's something like, I have a dangerous mission. I need a West Point football player, right?
Yeah, it's a quote from General George C. Marshall from World War II. It's like, I need an officer for a secret and dangerous mission. I want a West Point football player. And I mean, that resonates to this day.
Yep.
That resonates, and that's something that we take a tremendous amount of pride in. And when you see former players go do awesome things in the Army, you get really proud that they're carrying that torch forward.
And he's putting up a couple NFL players too. Like a couple of these guys are cracking through because the league knows what kind of kids he's producing. And you want like a badass special teams player. Like I want an Army guy, right? You want a long snapper? I would take every long snapper out of Army every year. But let me ask you, finishing our inaugural Manosphere Monday and finishing on sports, 2 predictions I'm going to ask you to make. You pick the Dodgers. Army's playing Air Force this weekend. I'm going to ask you to pick that one. And Monday night, we got a great matchup, I think. The Commanders against the Chiefs. I'm going, but first of all, I'm gonna call Army, okay? I'm gonna go with my heart. I'm gonna say Army's gonna upset Air Force. This is a big one for them. They're gonna put it together. I think they're gonna win it, and I'm gonna say the Chiefs. I think are rolling. Everybody underestimates the Chiefs, but they have that culture. They've got Magic Patty Mahomes. He gave an armband to my kid a couple weeks ago, so I'm rooting for him forever now. The Commanders are not what they were last year, and the Chiefs I think are gonna get rolling at home. So I'm picking the Chiefs. But who you got, Connor?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to mention really quickly, because you mentioned some guys in the NFL and 2 storylines from Army. Jimmy Charlo was all over Hard Knocks this year with the Bills, and he ultimately came back, made the team, and has played recently. And then this past Sunday, Brett Toth started at center for the Eagles. So, I mean, yeah, it's indicative of the culture and the program that we're running there at Army. And there's a bunch of other names, and enough now that I don't have time to mention them all. But yeah, I'm going to obviously, I think the Chiefs are starting to just kind of gel and seems like they're just falling into their old ways. And the Commanders have been less than impressive. I think they came into this year, and I think there were high hopes for the Commanders that they might challenge for the division, and it just doesn't feel like that anymore. And then, listen, you don't even need to ask me. Like, we're 1.5 road favorite. I think, spreads don't mean anything when it comes to Service Academy football. You saw Air Force nearly took down Navy a few weeks ago. I think Army has been playing. I know we lost in heartbreaking fashion 2 weeks ago to Tulane, but our record is not indicative of how we've been playing for the last month, and we're trending in the right direction. So I anticipate that we're going to beat Air Force this weekend.
All right. There it is, the prediction from the man who probably knows Army football publicly better than anybody I can think of. Before we totally move off of this, I got to ask you, the meteoric rise of Barstool. You've been there for it, right? In the early days, you had come back from the Army, you were kind of banging on the door. You guys started Zero Block 30, what is it, maybe 10 years ago now, right? You did it for
2016, September 2016 we started it, yeah.
And you guys had, I think probably the most influential military podcast, and you were on the Barstool Network. You've been there to see Portnoy's rise and all the ups and downs. But can you talk about, I think there's a lot of overlap. This is independent Americans. I think there's a lot of folks who are trying to reach that audience that I share, that you share, the folks who are not partisan, who are kind of in the guts of this country. And that's who Barstool has always been talking to, right? Especially the most rabid sports fans. But can you talk about the power of Barstool? Like, how can Barstool impact this country now in a moment where everybody's so divided. People are looking to Portnoy as a thought leader. He's got a lot of political influence. He's raised money. But to all you guys in the network, you're as influential as any other media platform in America. What are your thoughts on where you guys are and what you're going to do in the years ahead?
Yes. So I don't know that anybody at Barstool looks at themselves and looks in the mirror and says, it's my job to influence the rest of the country. I think people at Barstool respect and understand the reach that the company has. And certainly Dave is on a different level. But what I think Barstool embodies top to bottom, anybody who has any platform anywhere at Barstool, is that people are honest. And I think the American people gravitate towards honesty. And I think there's a number of reasons why I think Dave has reached the levels that he has, but I think at his core, it's because he hasn't wavered from telling it like it is. And that sounds cliche, but that is the reality of the situation. I think when you turn on different sports channels or you follow certain people, you can always kind of read through the lines and you understand that I don't know that they actually believe what they're saying. They're just saying this because they think that's what they have to say. And, taking it all the way back to the beginning when we're talking about politicians, I think a lot of politicians say things because they think that's what they have to say. Whereas the difference with Barstool is that everybody says what they believe, and you can appreciate that nobody's setting out to, shape the world, but in being honest, people gravitate to the company and certainly to Dave. And then you can see from there all the positive impact the company has had, whether that's, money raised for a number of different causes or, just recently with the unfortunate passing of, friend of Barstool and my friend, Nick Mangold. He was talking about how when he was going through his dialysis treatments and he was putting on one of the shows, the Yak, each day, just to give him that release and that entertainment. And I think that's what's crazy about entertainment now and the internet is you don't know who you're reaching. So it's important to always maintain that level of honesty because you never know who's going to hear you and how you might impact them. So in that regard, I think Barstool is able to have that influence.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you also for mentioning Nick Mangold. I mean, it's a terrible loss. I think not just for the football community, but for the country. He was such a respected legend, and not just for his play, but for the way he carried himself. I never met him, but respected him from afar. And, hearts go out to him and his family and everybody who knew him. But also, I think it's a moment to celebrate his leadership and people like him. He represented that authenticity too. Connor, would you think Portnoy would ever run for office? This is a moment for authenticity. We're also, shout out to Independent Veterans America. We got candidates we've endorsed. We're looking for more, especially folks that listen to Connor's shows. If you're an independent veteran, you want to run for office, check out Independent Veterans of America. But Connor, you think Portnoy would ever run? I mean, he could actually win. I don't say that dismissively. If he ran for something, he could actually win. And would you ever run? Because New Jersey could use some help.
So for me, I'll say maybe. I think that would be a bigger conversation I'd have to have with my wife because that's obviously a very big imposition on someone's family. But I would say not anytime soon for myself. As far as Dave goes, he could absolutely win, I think, a number of different offices. But I don't know that he would run. And I've never talked to him about this. I'm speculating because I think he believes that he can do more from the seat he's in and have a greater impact and doing what he's doing now versus getting hamstrung by political office. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, the political landscape looks a little different and answers might change. But I think right now, no, I don't see him running for any sort of office.
I mean, if he ran for mayor in New York right now, he'd beat all three of them, right? I mean,
yeah, he's not
right?
too pleased with that mayoral race. No, he said publicly he's not
picking office, and I don't say that dismissively because I think this is a moment actually for unconventional candidates. Trump is the most unconventional of all, and if a guy like Portnoy or somebody like Mark Cuban or Matthew McConaughey, right, especially if they run as independents, if they run self-funded or grassroots funded, I think they could shock some people. Dude, you've been really generous with your time. I'm going to ask us to end on one point that I've been trying to end every show with. Something good. Something good is a new segment I brought in where I've been trying to share with folks something good. There's a lot of shit going on in the world, a lot of people divided. I'm going to share something good. There's an artist named Jesse Wells. Well, I don't know if you've heard this guy. He's basically like doing acoustic songs in like cornfields and in the woods. And I think he's really, really great. He's got a really powerful criticism of ICE, and this song has gone viral called Join ICE that everybody should check out. He's also got a fantastic Halloween song that I think is an instant classic, and my kids are going to be singing forever. It might actually get them to stop singing the Steve's Lava Chicken song for a minute.
Well, if you're looking for purpose in the current circus, if you're seeking respect and attention, if you're in need of a gig that'll help you feel big, come with me and put some folks in detention. Just last week was kind of rough. I put a kid in cuffs and zip-tied a woman to a van. We can sneak around town hunting working folks down. I hear they get a great benefit plan. Join ICE, boy, ain't it nice? Join ICE, take my advice. If you're lacking control and authority, come with me and hunt down minorities. Join ICE. Well, I failed the academy, the cops weren't having me, the army didn't sound that fun, so I found me a paramilitary operation that was keen to hand me a gun. See, I got picked on in school, I never felt that cool, there's a hole in my soul that just rages. All the women turned me down, they told me I was a clown. Well, won't you look at me now, I'm putting folks in cages. At ICE, they got great hours, join ICE for respect and power. They got a sign-on bonus of 50 grand. They're in need of you needing to feel like a man. Join ICE. Join ICE.
And that's Jesse Wells. Check him out. Follow him on social media. I've invited him to come on the show, and I hope he will. That's just something good for you on a Monday, October 20th. Captain Khan, what's something good, man? Something good to share with the people.
Yesterday, I had an opportunity to spend the day with my family, and my daughter has been enthralled by this book called Pinkalicious, and it's one of the staples at bedtime, whether it's myself and usually my wife. She does the reading, and then I recently have fallen into a routine where I sing part of your world from Little Mermaid, and then she goes to sleep. But yesterday we went into the city and we saw a production of Pinkalicious as a family, and to see my daughter reacting to that and smiling, and there were a few times where she leaned over and hugged my wife because she was so happy that that was how she wanted to show her happiness. And that was just really rewarding as a father to see your child just so happy that she didn't know how to express her happiness. You know, so I'm just very blessed that I have two healthy, awesome children and an amazing wife, and we're fortunate that we can do things like go see Pinkalicious, in Manhattan on a Sunday morning. So that was a good thing for me this weekend.
That is something really good, man. That's the kind of stuff we need more of. Pinkalicious, maybe a future sponsor of the Bold American Pod, right?
Possibly,
Free tickets for everybody.
Yeah.
Dude, before we end, folks, I was on CNN, MSNBC, News Nation last week. Look for more of that. Want to give you a preview. Coming up later this week, I'm going to have Republicans, Democrats, everything in between. This is our inaugural Manosphere Monday. But coming on Tuesday, my old friend John Reed is a Republican running for lieutenant governor in Virginia. I think tomorrow he's going to be on with me. So stay tuned for that. We had Jamie Harrison, the former chair of the DNC, on Friday last week. Coming up this Friday, Ro Khanna, congressman from California, a Democrat. Going to have him on for Friday. Recent episodes with Dan Lamothe from the Washington Post about the Pentagon war with Pete Hegseth. Ken Burns about his new series on the revolution. Go check him out. Subscribe. Do what you all have done for Connor's shows for so many years and help us bring this message to the masses. But before we wrap, man, I just want to thank you. Connor Crehan, you've been a really important role model for the veterans community also. You've been an important voice. You don't pull any punches. Your personal journey's been a real inspiration, man. And I'm rooting for you and your entire team. Check out his new podcast, The Bold American Pod, on Barstool, with my old friend Ryan Mannion and others. Any other thoughts or things you want to share, man, before we wrap?
Yeah, just, what we've seen in the last 24, 48 hours, losing Nick has just put good out there. I think there's so much hate out there right now, and people run to their phone or their keyboard to spew hate and tell you why something's horrible or why you stink, and they don't say it that politely. just put good out there. If you put good out there, you'll get good back, and it's so much easier and it's so much more fulfilling. So, Paul, thank you very much for the opportunity to chat with you today. I'm glad we were able to make it happen, and I look forward to hopefully chatting with you again in the future and getting you on over at Bold American. So check out Bold American, and hopefully we'll have Paul over there very soon.
Do that. And every Monday, I will try to bring back Manosphere Monday. We are daily now. You can subscribe everywhere. Check out our Patreon community. Most of all, help us continue to bring light to contrast the heat and elevate the voices of leaders like Connor, who are meeting the moment in different ways and setting a really good example, most of all, for our kids. With that, I will end with Go Army. We're rooting for your boys this weekend.
That's right.
Until next time, folks, declare your independence, especially from traditional corporate partisan media. Declare your independence from the Democrats and the Republicans. We are the majority now, and we are the future. Stay vigilant. Know you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant. We're all in this together. Until next time, I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Stay vigilant, America. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Paul.
All right,
Thank you.
man.